On to a breaking update detailing the emergence of contemporary forms of religious phobia, especially anti-Hindu, anti-Buddhist and anti-Sikh phobias, is matter of serious concerns and needs the attentions of the United Nations and all member states to address this threat. That is what is being highlighted by India. That is there a need to strike greater balance into discussion on such topics. Crispino, what does it mean as far as the India's stand is concerned, which clearly states that terrorism in all forms and manifestations should be condemned?
India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Tirumurthy, has drawn attention to what he calls as religiophobia. Now, let me take you through his comments. Now, he says that the emergence of the contemporary forms of religiophobia, especially anti-Hindu, anti-Buddhist and anti-Sikh phobias, is a matter of serious concern now and needs attention of the United Nations and all member states to address this threat. It is only that when we can bring greater balance into our discussion on such topics, then it can be fully addressed. So he goes on to highlight the growing concerns of the sentiment against Hindus, and it must be addressed at this point of time. He draws caution at the United Nations, and he also termed it as very dangerous, the tendency of several UN members driven by their political, religious and other motivations to label terrorism into categories such as racially motivated and other motivations. So he goes on to say that right-wing extremism or violent extremism, by giving such labels, this will push back countries to the pre-9/11 era of labeling them as your terrorists versus my terrorists. So he draws urgent caution to the attention of religiophobia. That's the term that he used here.
Absolutely, Crispino, because what is being said by India so far, that this is essentially a move to categorize terrorism and violent extremism that is conducive to terrorism based on motivation behind such attacks. And does it include, especially when it does hate crimes and those racially induced attacks as well, Crispino?
Absolutely. Here what we're looking in the larger context is that India is against labeling or bifurcating, terrorism into various compartments, and only by doing so and giving the others a platform to do such a thing that we are in fact further propagating such kinds of terror activities. And in this case, where he goes on to say as religiophobia, he has urged the UN members to desist from doing so because it will only increase the non-Abrahamic sentiments against the Buddhists, against the Sikhs, against the Hindus. So he has drawn caution here and thrown light on the focus of such a trend which is happening at this point of time.
All right, so what is being said so far that in the last 2 years, several member states that is being driven by their political, religious and other motivations have been trying to label terrorism into categories such as racially and ethnically motivated violent extremism, violent nationalism, right-wing extremism, amongst others. And what is being said by India that this is a tendency which is dangerous for several reasons. It has also been highlighted, Crispino, that some of the counter-terrorism and trends and developments at the UN and their impact that is being seen on global counter-terrorism.
Yes, absolutely. When we're talking about counter-terrorism measures at the United Nations, Tirumurthy, the ambassador, has urged the world to act as one, drawing light. And as you rightly pointed out, in the past 2 years, we are seeing a trend by the member nations to, in fact, compartmentalize various kinds of terror activities. He also goes on to say that in the past 2 years, several member states are, in fact, driven by their political, religious and other motivations to so far categorize acts of terrorism. He goes on to say that some even are compartmentalizing by saying they are racially and ethnically motivated violent extremism, right-wing extremism, among others. And as we have been talking about the term religiophobia, which is alarming at this point of time, he has in fact drawn attention to the United Nations against such a dangerous trend in doing so.
Well, Shehzad Poonawalla is with us on the phone line. Shehzad, what is your point of view as far as, India taking up the matter of religion phobia and saying that there are many of those reasons that it needs to be highlighted, especially at the developments at the UN?
We have always heard of Islamophobia being raised across the world and particularly in India. But I congratulate the Indian government that the reality of religiophobia against non-Abrahamic faith, like Hindu religion particularly, Buddha religion, or even Sikhism, is on the rise. And the Indian government has chosen to raise it at the highest global platform, and therefore they deserve credit for that. But unfortunately, even as we raise this voice, look at what Congress party is doing. It embraces a Hindu hater like Tauqir Raza. You have the Samajwadi party that embraces a
Right.
person who's involved in the Saharanpur riots. So even while we raise this voice at the global level, some within our own country are the ones who promote Hindu phobia and Hindu hatred, and they do not accept or acknowledge that there is hatred and venom being spread against Hindus only because they have to use a particular community for vote bank, and therefore their narrative is only the Muslim victimhood card.
Shahzad, thanks very much for joining in at this point with your point of view. This has been a resurgence of terror activities that has been witnessed both in their range and diversity as well as geographical space. That is the highlights that has India made at the UN.